Today is July 2nd, 2026. The Vatican has officially declared that the priestly society of St. Pius X is in schism, and that its 6 bishops and all of its priests are excommunicated. Furthermore, those who adhere formally to the society, this means the lay faithful who adhere formally, are considered schismatic and excommunicated.
Are you suggesting that this is a knife I hold in my hand? Have you gone mad, my husband? Or is it I who am mad? Yes, of course, that's it. I am mad.
There was a clip from the 1944 film Gaslight. In that clip, you see Ingrid Bergman, who is gone insane or is questioning her own sanity. And this is because her husband has purposefully driven her insane. And he's done this. He's caused her to question her own sanity because he wants to cover up for his own wrongdoing. And of course, in recent years, gaslighting has become a verb in our society, and it means to manipulate someone, cause them to question their own memory, their own perception, their own sanity. And the person does this to make the victim dependent on them or to cover up for their own wrongdoing. And gaslighting is especially egregious when the victim has already suffered trauma in the past. When a victim has already suffered trauma and then they are gaslighted by their abuser, they start to lose the ability to trust. They question authority because they question themselves. The title of this video is "The SSPX Are Gaslighting the Faithful." Now, why do I say that? First of all, I have nothing but the highest respect for many people who are associated with the SSPX. Some of them, I believe, are associated through ignorance of the state of the society. Some of them have been driven there by abuses from other wings of the church. It's no secret that the church has been in crisis for many decades now. Ever since the Second Vatican Council and some of the reforms implemented by Pope Paul VI, St. Paul VI, there has been some major abuses in the church. But let's not kid ourselves, there were some real problems before the council. The council was not some kind of break in church history, pre-council, post-council, everything's good, everything's bad. But we would be kidding ourselves if we said that the promised new Pentecost has come and everything is great. We've seen a precipitous drop in church attendance. We've seen many religious, especially women religious, abandoning the religious life. The vocation to religious life has dropped dramatically. The vocation to the priesthood has dropped dramatically. Christian marriages have dropped. Infant baptisms have dropped. Belief in the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist has plummeted. I don't need to rehearse all the problems in the church. Many over the past 4 or 5 decades have been scandalized by the overuse of extraordinary ministers of the Eucharist, by clown masses, by altar girls, by horrible liturgical music, by mundane vestments, by horrible church architecture. And that's not even to mention the sex abuse scandals, etc. People have been victimized. They have experienced religious trauma, liturgical trauma of different kinds. And so they're looking for answers because they love the Lord and they want to be Catholic. They love being Catholic. They would rather die than not be Catholic. But groups like the SSPX take advantage of this. I'm not saying that everyone involved at the SSPX, all the priests, are responsible for this. I believe they themselves, many of the priests, have been duped. They've been lured in. They themselves are victims of this religious trauma. Their parents are. They've grown up in these traditionalist circles. They've grown up in these circles where they inherently mistrust the Pope. They inherently mistrust the local ordinary, the bishop. And so the SSPX plays on these fears. Apologists for the SSPX, going back to men like Michael Davies, whom I like Michael Davies. I like a lot of what he says. I think he's an affable fellow. I think he was a good man. I like to listen to interviews and things from Michael Davies. I've read some of his books. I think he's right about a lot of things, but I think he's dead wrong about a lot of things. For instance, I saw a post today from Michael Matt from The Remnant he reposted something, an old video of Michael Davies, citing Canon 844. Supposedly, according to Canon 844, according to Michael Davies, according to Canon 844, if you don't like that the local parish uses altar girls or extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, or you don't like that people try to give you the sign of peace, you can go to the Eastern Orthodox Church, or you can go to a schismatic Catholic group to fulfill your Sunday obligation. And that's simply not the spirit of the canon law. That's simply not what Canon 844 says. Canon 844 says, if you avoid grievous error or indifferentism, I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but that's just one of the tactics that apologists for the SSPX use. So I'm going to go through some things that show the real errors of the SSPX. And you'll notice at each point that they will gaslight the faithful who adhere to them into defending these egregious errors. First and foremost, the SSPX insist that they are disobeying the Vicar of Christ out of love. This is ridiculous. You no longer have Roman primacy, but you have a kind of Iconian primacy. Econ in Switzerland is where the major seminary of the SSPX is, and this is where the 1988 and the 2026 Episcopal consecrations took place, both of which resulted in schism and excommunication. I'm just going to go through a few things. By the way, if you're an adherent of the SSPX, or you're an apologist for the SSPX, or you disagree with what I'm saying, please interact with me. I'll respond to this. I'm just coming off the top of the head with a lot of this, but I have made some notes to make sure that I'm on point. The SSPX and its apologists, like Michael Davies, insist in the primacy of the individual conscience over the primacy of the Roman pontiff. Keep in mind, this is a conscience for many of these people that has been formed within a schismatic framework. Okay, we know as St. John, Cardinal Newman, John Henry Newman said that the conscience is the aboriginal vicar of the soul, and we should always follow our well-formed conscience. But if your conscience is being formed in a schismatic community, is it well-formed? Should you really follow your own conscience over the Bishop of Rome? Remember, as is often stated by moral theologians, doctors of the church, and saints, the only reason which men can have for not obeying is when anything is demanded of them which is openly repugnant to the natural or divine law. And there I'm quoting Pope Leo XIII. So, of course, you should obey a command that is directly immoral or opposed to divine law. But if there's even any question about that, presumption is in favor of the superior, and there's no greater superior on earth than the Vicar of Christ, the Roman Pontiff, the Bishop of Rome. Even if you're not sure about it, you are not at fault if you follow a command of a legitimate superior. The SSPX promote an especially aberrant form of rationalism. What do I mean by that? They will say that you need to do, quote unquote, a deep dive, as I had somebody tell me recently, into the documents of Vatican II, or into some of these supposed heresies from the Vatican Council and from the popes since then. You need to do your own research. You need to look into it. And this aberrant form of rationalism will look for loopholes in canon law. It will accentuate minor principles and minor canons over divine revelation itself, over ecumenical councils, over papal decrees, etc. So you have to study, dig deep enough until you've contented yourself that you're okay with God if you disobey a direct order from the Bishop of Rome or from your local ordinary. That's rationalism. That leads to Protestantism. I continue. We know that the primacy of the Bishop of Rome, the primacy of the Pope, is ordinarily exercised through the magisterium of the local ordinary, meaning the local bishop. But the SSPX regularly exercise episcopal prerogatives like confirming people without the permission of the ordinary. In other words, they're operating within a bishop's diocese, doing things only the bishop has the prerogative to do or to grant permission to do without his permission, and often against his express commands not to do these things. They establish seminaries, chapels, oratories, etc., without reference to the local bishop. They ordain priests without dismissorial letters from the local bishop. So this is without authorized permission from the local bishop. They ordain priests. And adherents to the SSPX will operate under the assumption that heresy is worse than schism. In fact, they will defend schism because of supposed heresies. But this is not in keeping with Catholic tradition. Heresy is the denial of some certain point of divinely revealed truth. So you may be correct about everything else, but you're off on one point, you're a heretic, if even only materially. But if you're a schismatic, you're completely outside of the church. And you can have all the truths correct, but you will not have salvation because you do not have the church. And the church is necessary for salvation. They promote a kind of modern Donatism. So in the Donatist heresy, you had Catholics who were especially fervent for the moral law, and they said that ministers who lived immoral lives or who had committed grave sins, that their sacraments were invalid. And Augustine showed how this was not true, and showed that you have all these things correct. You are in keeping with tradition on so many points. You are virtuous on so many points, but you're outside of the church, so you have no salvation. And lastly, I'll close with this. And I apologize for the sound of the air conditioning because it's 100 degrees here, and for the form this video is taken, but I just wanted to get these thoughts out there. The SSPX will undermine tradition to supposedly uphold tradition. And I'm quoting Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre here. He said, quote, we, meaning society, are the visible church, end quote. So you get the attitude here, a kind of subdued arrogance in many cases. This attitude that we, this small group, will save the church, and we will save the church by undermining the very foundation of the church. So I did a little research, just cursory research. The estimates are some 600,000 faithful are in some way associated with the SSPX. Some 30,000 attend their chapels in the United States. Many thousands were present at the Episcopal consecrations on July 1st. These people's salvation are in danger. But many would say, what's the big deal? This is a relatively small group within the church. There are billions in the Catholic Church. But I would say the SSPX, their footprint is bigger than their actual numbers. And anyone who is at least associated in any way with the traditional Catholic movement knows this. They cast a long shadow. And so moments like this are dangerous moments. There are moments when people could lose their salvation. They could lose their right thinking. They could go after error. And they do this out of zeal. So there's some ways I think that the SSPX are gaslighting the faithful. Don't buy into it. You'll see some of the media sources. You'll see some people, apologists like Michael Matt and like others on Twitter and on YouTube, who will try to convince you against common sense that you're okay to follow the SSPX even now that they are officially in schism. If you disagree with me, comment. I will interact with you. If you want to make a video debating me, I'll do that, if you care to do that. If you want to do it in written form, I can do that. I have a Substack. You got to give me a little bit of time to do that. I'm open to all those things. Praise be Jesus Christ. Ave Maria. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.